All right, so we're going to pick up now talking about schizophrenia. Now, the definition of schizophrenia, or when we're talking about schizophrenia, what we're talking about is the mind is split from reality. So, in the other disorders we've been talking about, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, okay, there's not a sense of loss of reality. Okay, it's more kind of the physical, emotional components that go along with it. With schizophrenia, though, this is when we start to see these reality breaks, that we're not sure what's real and what's not real. Okay, we start to see the hallucinations, the delusions, and those types of things. Okay, so schizophrenia is a type of psychosis. Okay, now psychosis, anytime you're talking about psychosis, it refers to the mental split from reality and rationality. Now, you can have psychosis that couples with some of the other disorders that we've talked about, and you can have a psychotic element to many different disorders. Okay, so psychosis in of itself is not necessarily an illness or a disorder, but it is a component of many other ones, and it is the main component of schizophrenia. Okay. Now, the schizophrenic symptoms include disorganized and or delusional thinking, disturbed perceptions, and inappropriate emotions and actions. Okay, so these are kind of the big umbrella of what are schizophrenic symptoms. Now, important thing to make sure you understand is that when we talk about schizophrenic symptoms, we cluster them together in two subcategories: positive and negative symptoms. Okay, positive symptoms mean that there is a presence of problematic behavior. Okay, so think of it as adding problem behaviors. Negative means that there's an absence of healthy behaviors. So we're taking away the good stuff. Okay, positive, we're adding the bad stuff. Negative, we're taking away the good stuff. So examples of positive symptoms are things like hallucinations, especially auditory hallucinations, delusions, okay, especially persecutory illusions, okay, disorganized thought and nonsensical speech and bizarre behaviors. Okay, so negative symptoms are things like flat affect, okay, meaning no facial kind of emotional component, reduced social interactions, and hedonia, okay, word I can't say, okay, which is no feeling of enjoyment, okay, avolition, which is less motivation, initiative, focus on tasks, alogia, speaking less, and catatonia, sorry, I know you guys can't see that down here at the bottom, but catatonia, which is moving, basically not moving, okay, so again, it's really, really important that you understand the difference between positive and negative symptoms, okay, and that you understand what are positive and what are examples of positive and negative symptoms, okay, so if you need to pause right now and write these all down, or go back in your book and make sure that you understand these, but this is a very, very key, important piece of understanding schizophrenia. All right, so schizophrenic symptoms, okay, so looking at these symptoms in general, right? Well, there's problems in thinking and speaking, okay, disorganized speech. We call this word salad, kind of loosely associated phrases where they kind of just start like going off on one thing to another thing to another thing, and it's nonsensical to anybody else because it is so disorganized and kind of just random. Okay, delusions. Okay, so again, here's another really, really important thing. Delusions are beliefs. They're thinking patterns, okay? So when we're talking about delusions, we're thinking about things that are just, that are often bizarre and not just mistaken, okay? And the most common are delusions of grandeur, thinking, especially the religiosity, thinking that you are Jesus, thinking that you are a savior, okay? Or persecution, delusions of persecution, which means somebody's after you, somebody's trying to hurt you, the aliens, the government, those kinds of things, okay? So again, delusions are false thinking patterns. They're cognitive. They're the ways that we think. Okay, and then problems with selective attention, difficulty filtering thoughts to choose what thoughts to believe and what to say out loud. Okay, and kind of being all over the place, not really being able to kind of have that filter. And so, kind of related to this disorganized speech, everything just kind of comes tumbling out, and that you lose that control. Okay, now disturbed perceptions, okay, are another piece, okay? People with schizophrenia often experience hallucinations, that is, perceptual experiences not shared by others, okay? The most common form of hallucination is hearing voices that no one else hears, often with upsetting or shaming content. Okay, hallucinations can also be visual, olfactory smell, tactile touch, or gustatory taste. Okay, good key word here. Make sure you guys understand gustatory taste. Okay, so again, hallucinations are perceptual inaccuracies, right? False perceptions. Now remember, this is something that people get really confused. Delusions are cognitive. Hallucinations are perceptual. So you can have any of our five senses of a hallucination. However, the most common for schizophrenics obviously are auditory, meaning they're hearing voices. And again, key thing I want to make sure you're clear on, this is not the same thing as dissociative identity disorder, where they had multiple of their own identity residing within them, where they can hear maybe perhaps them talking. With schizophrenia, the voices are of other people, okay? It's typically upsetting or shaming, okay? So it's not you within yourself, it's another thing talking to you. Okay. All right. Also, we have inappropriate emotions. Okay. Odd and socially inappropriate responses, such as looking bored or amused while hearing of a death. Flat affect. Another key term to make sure you understand. The facial body expression is flat with no visible emotional content, meaning that you have no reactivity in kind of your face or body. Okay. Impaired perception or emotions, including not reading others' intentions and feelings properly. Okay. So again, flat affect is kind of the big thing for inappropriate emotions. Now, and then inappropriate actions and behavior. Odd and socially inappropriate behavior can be caused by symptoms such as errors in social perception, disorganized, unfiltered thinking, delusions and hallucinations. Okay, and the schizophrenic body exhibits symptoms such as repetitive behavior such as rocking and rubbing, okay, and catatonia, sitting motionless and unresponsive for hours. Okay, so we also have this kind of physical piece that goes along with it as well. Now, what's the onset and development of schizophrenia look like? Typically, they appear at the end of adolescence and early adulthood, later for women than for men. Okay, prevalence is nearly 1 in 100 people develop schizophrenia, slightly more men than women. Okay, and the course of schizophrenia can either be acute, reactive, or chronic. Okay, so, acute reactive schizophrenia is in reaction to stress. Okay, some people start to develop positive symptoms like hallucinations. Okay, recovery in acute reactive is very likely. Okay, with chronic or process schizophrenia, okay, it develops slowly. Okay, with more negative symptoms such as flat affect and social withdrawal. Okay, with treatment and support, there may be periods of a normal life, but there's not a cure. Okay, so again, another really important thing to make sure you understand is the two different kind of onsets or courses that schizophrenia takes. This acute reactive, which is typically a stress or like a reaction to something, versus chronic and process, which is slow. Acute reactive is you're much more likely to be able to recover and live a normal life. With chronic process schizophrenia, treatment, and it's a much more difficult, not impossible, but much more difficult. Okay, and the chronic process schizophrenia without this, because it is such a slow onset and the negative symptoms are kind of there, it often leads to a lot more long-term problems than the acute or reactive schizophrenia does. Okay, now, so what are our subtypes of schizophrenia? Okay, again, these are the ones that you need to make sure that you can describe and know. Paranoid schizophrenic is hallucinations, often with negative messages, delusions, both grandiose and persecutory. Okay, disorganized schizophrenia. Primary symptoms are flat affect, incoherent speech, and random behavior. Catatonic, rarely initiating or controlling movement. Okay, it copies other speeches and actions. Undifferentiated, many varied symptoms, meaning that you kind of don't fit into any box. You're all over the place. Okay, and then residual schizophrenia is withdrawal continues after positive symptoms have disappeared. So we oftentimes see this kind of as a reaction to treatment. You start to get what we call residual schizophrenia. Okay, again, make sure you know these five. Make sure that you can describe these five. So if you need to pause and write these down, do that. All right, so next time, in the next video, we're going to talk about kind of understanding how and why schizophrenia occurs. Okay, so again, schizophrenia is a big